They will never understand you. And that's exactly why you must walk alone. In the depths of every human heart, there is a voice, a whisper, soft, persistent, undeniable. It calls us to walk alone. Not physically, not through deserted streets or lifeless landscapes, but through the terrain of the mind. A journey that demands isolation from the illusions of the world. A path that questions everything we've been taught to believe. This whisper is a calling. It is not a cry for pity or despair, but a summons to something far greater. Is loneliness truly a curse, as society tells us? Or is it perhaps the final frontier of freedom? A domain where the shackles of societal expectations dissolve, where the mind can think clearly without the noise of the crowd. To walk alone is not to be isolated physically. No, it is much deeper than that. It is a psychological separation from the noise of the world, a departure from the endless distractions, the collective belief systems, the mass delusions that are often disguised as truth. Walking alone is an act of defiance against the false comforts of social norms. It's choosing to stand apart, even if it means standing alone. Think of it. Every great revolution, every shift in human history began with a single mind. A mind that dared to separate from the masses. A mind that walked alone. The greatest minds throughout history, those who reshaped our world, those who sparked the fires of change, were in the beginning isolated. They were often misunderstood. They were cast aside as outcasts, as fools, as madmen. But their isolation was not a sign of weakness. No, it was their strength. For it is in solitude that the mind is unshackled, free to soar above the limitations of the crowd. It is in the quiet spaces between voices that the most profound ideas emerge. But you must dare to listen. You must dare to walk alone. They built illusions. We shattered them. They built cages. We escaped them. And now we find ourselves at a crossroads, facing the greatest question of all. What if walking alone isn't a curse, but our highest calling? What if it is the key to understanding who we truly are and what we're truly capable of? There is a dangerous beauty in walking alone. It is the beauty of self-discovery, the beauty of seeing the world as it truly is, free from the distortions of society. But it's not easy. To walk alone is to leave behind comfort, to leave behind the warmth of belonging. It means turning away from the path most people follow and heading into the unknown. It is a journey that demands courage, resilience, and above all, clarity. And yet it is only in solitude that you may hear your true calling. Only in the stillness can you hear the whisper, you are not lost. You are free. And to understand why this freedom, this act of walking alone, is not just a personal choice, but a cosmic necessity, we must first step back into the shadows of history. Every revolution begins with a whisper, and that whisper often rises from the silence of a solitary mind. History is filled with those who walked alone, those who stood apart from the crowd, not out of weakness, but because they saw the truth that others were too afraid or too conditioned to acknowledge. In ancient Greece, Socrates walked alone. He questioned the gods, the laws, the very foundation of society. At the time, the Greek world was defined by order, tradition, and belief in the divine. Socrates, however, did not simply accept the world around him. He sought truth relentlessly. He believed that the only way to understand the true nature of things was to strip away the layers of lies, the beliefs passed down through generations. And this pursuit of truth led him to stand alone, defying the gods and the very pillars of Athenian society. He didn't march in the streets. He didn't gather an army. He simply asked questions, questions that exposed the weakness of conventional thinking, and for this he was condemned to die. His execution marked the cost of walking alone, the price that history demanded for the one who dares to question. Socrates is not alone in this. Consider Galileo Galilei, who stood against the religious and scientific authorities of his time. At a time when the Earth was thought to be the center of the universe, Galileo looked through a telescope and saw something entirely different. He saw moons orbiting Jupiter. He saw a universe that didn't revolve around humanity. He saw a universe that had no place for human arrogance. Yet he continued to speak the truth. Galileo, like Socrates, was excommunicated, imprisoned, and silenced for his convictions. Yet his solitary pursuit of truth changed the world forever. Galileo walked alone, and that loneliness, that rejection by the world, became the very foundation of modern science. In more recent history, Martin Luther King Jr. embodies the same spirit of solitude in the face of overwhelming resistance. In the heart of the 1960s, when America was defined by segregation, violence, and hatred, King spoke of a dream that he knew would cost him everything. He was not calling for violence. He was not calling for revenge. He was calling for peace, for justice, for unity. Yet he understood that his path would be one of isolation, of standing alone against the powerful forces of racism and inequality. King walked alone through his ideas. He embraced loneliness not as a weakness, but as the fire that would fuel change. And ultimately, he paid the ultimate price. But his vision, born from solitude, transformed an entire nation. These figures from history did not seek the comfort of the crowd. They did not yearn for validation from society. They walked alone because they understood something crucial. The majority, the crowd, is often blinded by its own assumptions and fears. Only by stepping away from the crowd, only by walking alone, can one see things as they truly are. This solitude is not something that is given freely. It is earned. It is a space created through conscious rejection of the world's pre-packaged truths, the assumptions that we inherit from our families, our cultures, and our governments. The solitary walkers, the ones who have changed the course of history, did not simply rebel. They awakened to a vision that no one else could see, and in doing so, they set the stage for movements that would ripple through the world long after they were gone. So when you feel the weight of isolation, when you feel the sting of loneliness, remember this: You are walking in the footsteps of giants. You are part of a lineage of thinkers, rebels, and visionaries who understood that the most powerful ideas come from the most unlikely of places, from the solitude of a single mind willing to challenge the world. To walk alone is not to be powerless. It is to be armed with the truth. It is to be the catalyst for change. History teaches us this. Those who walk alone are the ones who shape the future. They walk silently, but they march with purpose. And they march because they know that in the end, it is only in solitude that one can truly see the world. Loneliness is a paradox. It is both a prison and a key. It isolates, yet it also liberates. It brings pain, but it also offers clarity. The price of freedom is steep, and loneliness is often the currency we must pay. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff, looking into the abyss. It is terrifying, yes. The winds howl. The world seems to close in on you. But in that moment of solitude, something remarkable happens. The chaos of the world falls away, and what remains is clarity, the vast expanse of the universe. The truth that we so often overlook in the rush of life. Psychologically, loneliness is a deeply unsettling feeling. It taps into our primal fears, the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection, the fear of being forgotten. Our brains are wired to seek connection. From the moment we are born, we are programmed to attach, to belong, to find safety in the embrace of others. Social bonds are vital to our survival. We are not meant to be isolated. And yet, in the isolation, we are forced to confront something far deeper, the self. Loneliness forces us to face who we are when the noise of the world falls silent. It strips away the distractions, the roles we play, the masks we wear to fit in. When we walk alone, there are no expectations, no judgments, just us. And in that stillness, we are forced to ask, who am I really? For many, this is the most frightening question of all. It is easier to lose ourselves in the crowd. It is easier to blend in, to follow the script that society has written for us. But in that blend, in that conformity, we lose our individuality, our authenticity. We become mere echoes of those around us. The price of freedom, then, is this confrontation with the self. The discomfort of loneliness forces us to stop running from the truth. And when we finally stand still, stripped of the comforting illusions of the world, we may find something extraordinary. We may find ourselves. But freedom does not come without its costs. Loneliness can be agonizing. It can feel like an abyss that swallows you whole, where your thoughts echo and bounce back at you like a never-ending storm. It can feel like you're being erased, as if no one can see you, hear you, or understand you. But in those moments, we discover an important truth. Loneliness is not the absence of love or connection. It is the absence of illusion. When we are alone, we are no longer surrounded by the facades that the world has built around us. The masks come off, the walls crumble, and what remains is raw, unfiltered reality. It is in this space that we are free to create, to innovate, and to think without restriction. Think of the great inventors, philosophers, and artists throughout history. Many of them spent long stretches of time alone. It was in their solitude that they found their greatest ideas. Nikola Tesla, whose name is synonymous with innovation, spent much of his life alone. He lived in the shadows, apart from the rest of the world, and it was in that solitude that he conceived ideas that would change the course of history. Loneliness, then, is not merely a state of mind. It is a state of being. It is a condition that allows us to step outside of the scripted narrative we are given and start to write our own story. It is the fertile ground from which true creativity and innovation spring. But this path is not for the faint of heart. To embrace loneliness is to embrace uncertainty. It means leaving behind the safety nets, the social comforts, the distractions that keep us tethered to a world that often fails to see us for who we truly are. It means taking the first step into the unknown, trusting that in the darkness we will find the light. So when you feel the sting of loneliness, remember this: you are not alone. You are standing at the precipice of something profound. You are on the edge of discovering who you truly are, away from the noise, away from the illusions, away from the expectations of the world. And in that discovery, you will find the freedom to live a life that is not shaped by others, but by your own truth. This is the price of freedom, loneliness, but it is a price worth paying, for it is in the solitude that we find the courage to walk our own path. The crowd is a force. It is the collective energy of many minds, each individual lost in the swell of the masses. It moves in unison, driven by shared beliefs, emotions, and ideologies. But the crowd is not organic. It is manufactured. It is manipulated, guided by unseen hands who shape its desires, direct its actions, and most importantly, control its thoughts. Modern society thrives on crowds. Social media, politics, the economy, they all depend on the crowd's behavior. But what happens when we take a closer look at the way these crowds are formed? The truth is far more unsettling than we might imagine. In the age of information, we believe we have access to the truth. We think we can form our own opinions, make our own choices, and decide our own path. But the reality is that most of what we think we know, most of what we believe, has been carefully crafted. The crowd we believe to be acting of its own accord is, in fact, a product of deliberate manipulation. Think of social media algorithms. These seemingly neutral systems are designed to push content into our feeds, content that reinforces our biases, fuels our fears, and most critically, keeps us engaged. We are told that our voices are heard, that our opinions matter. But in reality, we are being funneled into preordained boxes, where the content we consume is controlled, packaged, and delivered to us in the most addictive form possible. These algorithms don't just recommend content based on our preferences. They create preferences. They sow division, amplify outrage, and fuel polarization. The illusion is simple. We are free to choose, but our choices have already been made for us. Consider the political landscape. In any modern society, political ideologies are often seen as polarizing forces. We are told to pick a side, to take a stand, to fight for one view or the other. The media, through a constant barrage of information, shapes our perceptions, forces us into categories, and molds us into part of the crowd. And like the algorithms, the media doesn't just reflect our reality, and it shapes it. The narratives are carefully constructed to create division, to make us feel that our view is the only right one, and that the other is not just different, but dangerous. This manipulation is not new. It has existed for centuries, albeit in different forms. Think back to the rise of propaganda in the 20th century. The leaders who shaped the minds of entire nations didn't rely on truth. They relied on perception, on emotional manipulation, on the ability to create a shared myth that would bind the crowd together. The crowd in turn became a weapon, one that could be used to control, to subjugate, and to direct the masses toward a singular goal. The manufactured crowd is not only a political tool, it is a social one as well. Our desire for validation, for approval, is exploited by those who understand the power of collective thought. Social media influencers, brands, and celebrities all operate within this realm of controlled influence. They understand that we are driven by the need for connection, for acceptance, and they know how to exploit this need to keep us coming back, clicking, liking, sharing, all the while feeding us a version of reality that benefits them. The manufactured crowd thrives on our need for belonging. It lures us in, promises us safety in numbers, and convinces us that we are stronger together. But this strength is an illusion. The crowd is not a collective of free thinkers. It is a collection of followers, each one tethered to the same pre-packaged beliefs, ideas, and narratives. The power of the crowd is not in its unity, but in its ability to create division. By creating a clear us versus them, the manipulators keep us fighting amongst ourselves while they remain in control, unchallenged and unscathed. We must ask ourselves, how much of our reality is truly our own? How much of what we believe? What we fight for is shaped by forces beyond our control. The more we engage with the manufactured crowd, the less we are able to see the world for what it truly is. We are swept up in the current of opinion, emotion, and ideology, and in the process, we lose sight of who we really are and what we truly want. But there is another way. It requires a choice. The choice to walk alone. In the silence of solitude, we can hear the voices of our own thoughts. We can think clearly, unfettered by the distractions of the crowd, unshackled by the forces that seek to control us. Walking alone is not an act of rebellion for rebellion's sake. It is the act of reclaiming our autonomy, of freeing ourselves from the manufactured narrative and beginning to write our own story. The crowd will always try to pull us back in. It will whisper in our ears, remind us of the comforts of belonging, the safety of numbers. But we must remember, the greatest revolutions, the greatest changes in history came not from the crowd, but from those who dared to walk alone, from those who refused to be molded, who refused to be manipulated. The question is no longer whether we can escape the crowd. The question is whether we have the courage to. The world is noisy. It is filled with voices, voices that tell us who we should be, what we should believe, and how we should live. The crowd shouts louder and louder, drowning out the whispers of our own minds. It is easy to fall into line, to follow the path that is laid before us, to be swept up in the illusion that we are not alone, that we are part of something greater. But this is the lie of the crowd. For centuries, humanity has told itself stories about the collective, how strength lies in numbers, how safety comes from conformity. And yet, history has shown us time and time again that the greatest advances, the greatest shifts, were never born from the crowd. They were born from the lone walker, the one who dared to see the world differently, the one who refused to be swept up by the illusions of the masses. The lone walker is not a solitary figure because they want to be alone. They are alone because they see things others cannot see. They hear the truth that the crowd refuses to acknowledge. They understand that the only way to break free from the chains of mass manipulation is to step outside the noise, to listen to their own inner voice, to walk a path that has not been paved for them. Walking alone is not about rejecting the world or the people around us. It is about reclaiming our autonomy, our ability to think for ourselves, to make our own choices. It is about finding the courage to walk away from the distractions, from the narratives that are shoved down our throats, from the ideologies that demand our loyalty. The lone walker does not need the approval of the crowd. They are not bound by the constraints of societal expectations. They are free. This freedom, however, comes at a cost. The path of the lone walker is not easy. It is filled with uncertainty, with doubt, with isolation. The crowd will try to pull you back, to make you feel like you are missing something, like you are wrong to walk alone. But this is where the true strength lies, in the ability to withstand the pressure, to remain true to yourself despite the overwhelming forces that seek to bring you back into the fold. To walk alone is to embrace the unknown, to step into a space where only your own voice matters. It is a path of self-discovery, a path of growth, a path that ultimately leads to freedom. The lone walker does not seek to be celebrated, to be admired, or to be understood. They walk because they must, because the truth can only be found in the quiet moments, in the stillness of the soul, in the distance from the noise of the world. In the end, it is not about being alone. It is about understanding the power of solitude, the power to see beyond the illusions, to hear the truth, and to create a life that is truly your own. The crowd may try to pull you in, but the lone walker knows something the crowd will never understand. True strength lies not in numbers, but in the courage to walk alone. And so, as you stand at the crossroads with the crowd behind you and the open path ahead, remember this. The greatest revolution is not the one that is fought in the streets, not the one that is celebrated by the masses. The greatest revolution is the one that happens within. It is the revolution of the mind, the revolution of the soul, the revolution of the lone walker. To walk alone is not to be weak. It is to be free.